What's up, One Church? How you feeling today? Man, great to have you here. Thanks for being a part of this service. And it's already been an action-packed weekend. Yesterday morning, we had Dr. John Perkins was in the house. And if you don't know who Dr. Perkins is, you need to go to Google and YouTube and type this in. He recently wrote a book, One Blood, but he is a civil rights leader around the world. Has a powerful story of where God has brought him, and 89 years old, and I've never seen anyone with that much fire. I mean, he's jumping off the stage. I was like, man, so I had a chance to ask him some questions yesterday, and I really felt like I was interviewing a Bible character. Like, that's how I felt, just an amazing person. And so we recorded that. We're going to be posting it. We'll be putting it on our social media stuff and our website and everything. So if you weren't able to be here yesterday morning, you're going to want to catch that when you get some time, and we will make that available to you real soon. We're going to be starting a series today called Revival. And so if you're here and you're a church person, like if you grew up in church, you've been around church, and you understand church nomenclature, you've heard the word revival before, and it probably brings up a certain connotation in your mind of an experience or something you've heard about or maybe you've been a part of. And if you're not from church, like you didn't grow up in church and you're new here, first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for being here and for taking the risk to show up to church. I mean, I realize if you come in and you feel like a fish out of water within church, it can be very intimidating. And most of the time, I think folks that come in that frame of mind are thinking, if these people really knew me, if they knew where I've been and what I've done, they probably wouldn't want me here. And I want you to know that we do want you here. We are super thrilled you're here. We hope you feel so comfortable you kick your shoes off. Go ahead. If you don't have foot odor and you want to kick your shoes off, go ahead. I mean, we don't even care. And we hope you love it so much that you come back next week and you bring somebody with you. You are welcome here. But what I want to do is talk revival, because if you're not from church background and you hear us talking about revival, you're like, what are you talking about? Like shock paddles? Or what do you mean? Revival is a term that's been used over time to describe God moving and doing things in his body, in the church, and through his people during a time that the culture needed a move of God. I want to be very clear theologically and create a foundation for this when we use terms like God moving and things like that. We talked last week about how the Apostle Paul said that I've been crucified with Christ, and nevertheless I live. Yet not I, but Christ lives in me. So when we talk about God moving, we're talking about God moving both in and through people. Okay, God doesn't do something outside of people. He uses people. And so we know that in him we live, move, and have our being. But in us, he lives, moves, and has his being. He lives inside of us and is moving us. So yes, we follow Jesus and we follow his teachings, but really we're moving with Jesus. God is taking us somewhere. And so we just want to be in lockstep with that. I want to be very clear about this. If you've been a part of something that God was doing during a certain time, a special thing that God did, a revival of sorts, I want you to be careful to not anchor yourself in the past. Sometimes a big threat to what God wants to do next is what God did last. And people get so caught up in nostalgia and great memories and the great warm fuzzy thing that happened, or the great move and the very authentic move of God in a certain time. And yet maybe God wants to do something different now. Things are changing, and so God will take some of the timeless things, the truth of his word, and will take his people and say, no, I've got an assignment for you. I've got some things that I want you to do collectively. And so we're just kind of around here, we're developing a holy curiosity around what does God want to do. We say this: you can't plan for a move of God, but you can prepare for a move of God. We don't plan it. We don't say, okay, God, on October 7th, we'd kind of like you to do this, this, and this. But what we do is say we want to prepare ourselves to predetermine obedience to God, to begin to seek his face and to say, okay, God, what do you want to do? What are you doing? And then we go on this journey together. It's been interesting if you study history a little bit and you look at American history. We were founded in 1776. Right before we were founded as a nation was a revival that happened. It was called the Great Awakening. It happened in Europe and England, and then came through the American colonies before we were even a nation, like the 1740s. After we became a nation, there was another Great Awakening. The Second Great Awakening is what historians have labeled it. It happened in the 1800s, the early to mid 1800s. And actually through the Second Great Awakening, There were things like anti-slavery came out of the Second Great Awakening. Women's rights came out of the Second Great Awakening. During that time, the women didn't have a right to vote, so suffrage came through that. There was a Third Great Awakening. In the early 1900s, there was the Azusa Street Revival, which was a cultural anomaly in that day. It was at the height of Jim Crow, the Jim Crow laws, and there was people of all races and classes coming together, worshiping. It didn't make any sense. The papers didn't know what to say. And then in the 20th century revival, there's been a lot of things that have happened. And so what we want to do is be aware of what God has done and be happy about that, but also to go, okay, God, what do you want to do now? Because things are different. And so God's going to do a different thing. I want you to think about this. The world right now, somebody asked me this week. They said, Greg, what do you think most people right now, what's their biggest challenge? And that's a very broad question because I realize there's nuance to that. People are going through specific things. But when they asked me that question, my answer was, I think right now, pretty much everyone feels a general sense of instability, okay, because everything's been disrupted. Things are changing so fast. It's created a frenetic pace. So you go to work and things are changing because there's no matter what country, no matter what business you work in, there is some entrepreneur who's working on something right now that has a bullet with your name on it, and they're coming after you, and they want to create a disruptive technology. So disruptive technologies are everywhere. Businesses are coming on hot and heavy. And so everybody, I'm talking about educational space, every sector, every part of the economy is like, everybody's looking over their shoulder. If somebody just invents something new that's coming after us. So we're all trying to adapt to social media, the information age, everything we've known, we're rethinking. So you do that at work, and then you come home, and your family is changing. Kids are changing. I'm trying to look at my kids and go, oh my goodness, what's changed in my children? And then trying to take that and reconcile it with the culture and go, are my kids on technology too much? They need to go climb a tree. What does a good parent do here? I don't know, what's going on? It's like, the iPhone has rewired everyone's brains. We're all a bunch of addicts, So I was like, oh, what do I do with my kids? And then, of course, I'm changing. People are changing. Individuals, you're changing. Everybody's changing. Different seasons of life, different things going on. And then the church is changing. One of our core values at One Church is change because we believe we're a battleship, not a cruise ship. So we're all the time looking at the culture and looking at the gospel and going, how do we create a relevant explanation? How do we invite in the presence of God? But things are changing, and you're coming in, it's like, doggone it, they changed something again, the background. Can we just sing How Great Thou Art, please? Can we just stick with a song? It's like, everything's changing. And so here we are with this frenetic pace. We're trying to keep the plates, spinning all the time. And so then we come in the house of God, and it's like, what do we do? And actually, I think it's a great opportunity, for us to go to God and to say, okay, God, I know what the government's saying, and I know what the economy's saying, and I know what everybody else is saying. What are you saying? What are you saying? What do you want to say to us? What do you want to speak into your people? What do you want us to do? I think it's ripe. I think it's ready. I think the world's ready for God to do something through his people. And so I don't know about you. I want to be in lockstep with that. Whatever that is, let's go, and let's go together and do this. Here's what we're doing. The next several weeks, I'm going to talk about 3 different topics. We're going to talk about what it means to be gospel-centered, what it means to be spirit-empowered, and what it means to be mission-focused. Okay, so I'm just giving you the map. This is where we're going. Gospel-centered, spirit-empowered, and mission-focused. And when God's done speaking to us about that, we'll talk about something else. All right? Today I want to talk to you, and I want to start with the idea of gospel-centered. Gospel-centered. The word gospel just simply means good news. Good news. If you've been around church, you know what the gospel is. You can articulate it. But I'm convinced that there are a lot of people that can explain the gospel who have not really experienced the gospel. It's possible, very possible, and maybe even likely, probable, that you can articulate the gospel and yet you've not had a revelation or a fresh revelation of the gospel. See, here's the gospel, very simple. We're all sinners. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And that's kind of cool because we're all in the same boat. Doesn't matter what side of the tracks, doesn't matter where you were born, when you were born, all of us have sinned and fallen short of God's glory. So we don't have to come in with a big facade up. We don't have to put a mask on. We can just go, you're a sinner, I'm a sinner, we're in the same boat. We said it last week. I'm not enough, he's more than enough, thank you, Jesus. That's the gospel. That I couldn't pay for my own sin. I had sinned and fallen short of God's glory, and that God made he who had no sin, Jesus, to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God. That God loved the world so much that he sent his son Jesus, so that whoever would believe in him would not perish but have everlasting life. So it's undeserved, can't earn it. I've been given his grace, and now his spirit lives inside of me. That's the gospel. That's the good news. A lot of people can explain it, but a lot of people don't really get it. And I think there's a chance, even though today you could maybe teach a Sunday school class or whiteboard it, maybe there's a gap in what you've really experienced or really understand about it. And it really comes down to really understanding God's love. All right, so here, let's expose it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what it's like to have a child, okay? So you have a baby, the child pops out, infant comes into the world. I'm just gonna be honest. Infants are miserable little creatures. And frankly, useless. I'll just be honest. I'm just being honest. You can't handle this? Like, I'll just be honest. Like, they are useless. They don't do anything other than just be very, very cute. That's it. I mean, if they weren't cute, why would we even? It's frankly what keeps them alive, is they're cute and they're little, but they can't do anything for themselves. They occupy at least one other human being, rendering them, basically their whole purpose in life is just make sure the kid doesn't die. Just make sure they have food, and make sure we don't like their cough, we'll get them some help, get them some medicine. And just drive the world crazy. I mean, wake up at 2 a.m. just, and I don't know what to do. You do know some children, if you've never gotten up with a child before, you go get up, sometimes they're just crying because they're bored at 2 a.m. It's like, shut up. Like, grow up. Would you grow up a little bit? And, but those are babies. And eventually, they start to mature a little bit and they get to where they can walk on their own, thank God. Most moms have scoliosis, and because they're just like this and like one massive bicep. And then eventually, they start to walk on their own and do some of their own things, and we have to start to train them. The challenge in training is that their brains have not evolved to understand abstract things, so they can't really understand the why, so we just have to get compliance. That's it. I just need you to do the right thing because the consequences are bad. And so okay, don't stick your finger in the light socket, don't go with strangers, don't run out in the street. And I can't fully explain why, because you can't comprehend the depths of the consequence. So I just have to try to manipulate your behavior and bribe you if I have to. So, we'll be like, listen, I'm gonna get you to do what I want you to do, okay? If you'll be quiet in Costco, this is what we do. Listen, if you'll stop biting kids and one kids, give you a dum-dum, all right? I got a dum-dum for you if you'll do the thing I want you to do. And so we just, we're trying to figure out what do they like, and we give them what they like. And we've all in here, we've all bribed a kid, okay? You're judging me right now, okay? You're 11:30 service. You're not supposed to be judging people, okay? We've all bribed a child with something. Okay, we'll take you to Dairy Queen. If you just shut up, I'll give you a donut. All right, just watch my phone if you know. Okay. So we do rewards just to get compliance. Eventually, what we have to do is develop a deeper understanding of character. We do want them to understand right from wrong, good and bad. But we're teaching them, we're training them. Eventually, they have to buy into that on their own. They have to be able to come to those conclusions and own that. But until they own it, so we rewards, and then we've got, this is a blankie, And so we help the child emotionally bond with their blankie so that when we're in a tight spot, we can threaten them with taking it away. It's like, you want me to take it away? Put them to bed, and they're making noise. You go in, you're like, I'll take your blanket away. Be quiet right now. Stop getting out of bed. I will kill your teddy bear. No. I'm kidding. I wouldn't have even thought of that if my wife hadn't done it. Kidding. Woo. This is what we do. This is what we do, right? We take away Blankeys and we offer dum-dums and we try to get compliance. And in the meantime, we try to instill values and behavior and raise decent human beings. Well, here's what gets real scary as they become teenagers. Jesus, take the wheel. Now they're teenagers. Okay, when they're teenagers, they have developed an abstract brain to be able to kind of understand the abstract, but also they're not mature enough to fully, really process the depths of the consequence. So we're in this really weird zone. So now we got to actually get bigger dum-dums. And we have to find out whatever they are attached to and threaten them with that. Because here's the thing. I mean, in all honesty, it's one thing you make a mistake as a little kid. That's not that hard to clean up. Most of those mistakes. But when I hand keys to a 16-year-old, right? Now I'm like, okay, if you don't understand values, character, and consequences, really, I know cognitively you understand death, but if you understand the anguish that comes with irresponsible driving could end your life or could kill somebody else. And so we go, listen, if I ever see you behind that wheel doing that thing, I will, and we figure out what they love and value and we threaten. I mean, our threats get bigger because we understand if you're 17, so you probably could find a way to get to opiates. You could probably get them if you get curious about opiates and you go and you start doing that stuff because you're curious or you're peer pressure and you give into it, that stuff can hook you and you have no idea the depth of how it will rob you. It will take you to a place you don't want to go and it will keep you longer than you want to be there and it will rob you of your life. And so we know that they don't necessarily fully grasp it. And so we're like, this is your brain and this is your brain on drugs and any questions and we try to go, oh, it's just so bad. And so if you do good, I'll give you one of these. And if you do bad, I'm going to take this away. And so this is how we do parenting. By the way, this is how many people, if not most people, do their relationship with God. Many people, most people, never graduate about a 6-year-old with God. I mean, I'll give you what I want. I'll give you what you want if you give me what I want. Oh, I must have broke the amen button. I mean, and we get into this stuff, and by the way, again, principles are true. We understand character. We understand cause and effect. We understand how this works. But when all of our teaching around giving is, well, if you give, then God will give you more. Pressed down, shaken together, running over. You won't even be able to handle all the blessing. You can't imagine how big of a dum-dum God will hook you up with. If you just give him your little sucker, and he'll give you a big old dum-dum, and we're like, oh, okay. And then, but what happens though? What happens if I shut up in Costco and God doesn't give me my dum-dum? I know people live like this because I have the conversations incessantly, nonstop, with people like, I don't know if I even believe in God anymore. I don't know if I want to follow him anymore. I'm not even going to go to church anymore. I'm walking away. Why? Well, because I shut up in Costco and he never gave me my dum-dum. I quit biting people and he still took my blanket away. He took away the thing I really wanted. The thing I really valued, the thing I really cared about, and the thing I'd really been going for, and I trusted him, and I did the stuff he wanted me to do. I gave him what he wanted. He didn't give me what I wanted. We stay here. It's an immature mindset. grow past it. Children, little children, right? They don't know what love is yet. 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, they don't know what love is. They don't. They can't, their brains haven't developed to be able to even comprehend something as abstract as love. So they tell you they love you, but they don't. Is this new information? They tell you they love you because when they tell you they love you, your face lights up and then you go, oh, here. They can't understand that. That's why they take everything from you. There's no 4-year-old that's like, looks at you and go, Mom, how can I reciprocate? 4-year-olds aren't thinking reciprocity. They're not thinking about how can I sacrifice? How can I contribute? They can't fathom love. They can't fathom love yet. And when they get to the place where you've proven your love, now the relationship, when they get mature, they become mature enough in a healthy family, in a healthy parent-child relationship, eventually the values now are known and owned. The character is known and owned. The consequences are understood. And now we move to a different place in our relationship. Come on, don't you want to change your relationship with God? Do you want to spend the rest of your life going, give me one of these, I'll do what you want? Come on, you want to be able to live in a place where you're obeying and you're believing and you're serving and you're stepping out in faith and you're sacrificing and you're doing all of these things from a deeper place than just, let's get past it. I realize not everybody has what I have in terms of my relationship with my parents. I have my mother and father here today. Mark and Jana Ford are my parents. I'm fortunate. I didn't realize it as a kid as much as I do now, how fortunate I am that I have parents that love me. I know this. I believe this. If I sinned and screwed up and messed everything up and did things that humiliate our family, and there would be major consequences for that, for me, emotionally, personally, relationally. And yet my parents have gone so far to prove their love for me. I don't worry that if all of y'all left me, that they would. I don't. I really believe that if I humiliated them and broke their hearts, that they would be next to me as long as they could. And so the proof of that love that I learned over time made it so that our relationship's different. After today, I'll go to their house. After most Sundays, we go eat at their house. And we don't do this anymore. My parents, my mom doesn't say, Greg, if you eat your Brussels sprouts, I'll give you some ice cream. My dad doesn't sit down at the table and go, I made some brisket here, and since you preached a good sermon today, I guess you can go ahead and have some. No, we're in a totally different place. So now we have an abstract relationship. Now we have a deeper relationship. Now we talk about things that are on our hearts. I ask for advice and wisdom, but we do it with a foundation of love. It's a different kind of relationship. You see, a revelation of the gospel and an understanding of God's love will take you to a totally different way of interacting with God and will put you in a totally different frame of mind. It creates a different foundation because you've had a revelation of it. You don't get there just by being able to articulate John 3:16 or quote it. You do it from really understanding the agape love of God. See, I said agape, I want to explain that. There's a beautiful book written by C.S. Lewis called The Four Loves, and it's a great book. If you want to, the complexity of love, if you want to learn more about that, pick that book up with like an Oxford dictionary so you can keep up with old CS. But within the book, he talks about 4 different kinds of love, and he talks about the first kind of love is called storge love, which is, it's a Greek word. The Greek word storge, which is spelled S-T-O-R-G-E, and it's like an affection. Okay, affection. So like, for example, some of you are like, oh, I love to go to the lake. I love to go fishing. I love that song. It's an affection. You hear the song, and it really does something to you. Your heart really does beat a little bit faster. You're like, oh my gosh, that's my jam. Like it does something to you. Like there's environments or things. Some of you are like, I love my favorite team or whatever that might be. You have real affection, and that's a real thing. The second kind of love is called phileo love. It's where we get, the prefix is where we get Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. So that's what it is, affection or love for another person, and almost like a brotherly, sisterly type of thing. You might have a best friend, a bestie, somebody you care about that you're like, man, we grew up together, we've been through it through thick and thin, we've been tight, and you really love that person, and they love you back. And it's how you feel about your siblings and your family and all of that. The third kind of love is called eros love, which the prefix of that is where we get the word erotic. It's a passionate love between a man and a woman. It's a passionate love in a relationship where, there's a sexual component to it. This is the person ultimately that I feel so strongly for, I commit to, and so there's that. All of those three, by the way, make sense on a human level. We all get that. You don't have to be a Christian. You don't have to know God. You don't have to have the Holy Spirit living inside of you to have storge love, to have phileo love, to have eros love. Those things just happen when we have a dimension to it. What C.S. Lewis talks about in the book is agape love, which is the Greek word that's used throughout the New Testament many times to speak of the love of God. It's a supernatural love. It really is irrational, and I'm going to show you exactly how irrational it is. It's a love that really doesn't make much sense. But what we do is when we're living within our own flesh in the way that we see love and the way we impulsively do love, we always end up here. Even if you get married, right? You get married, and when you get married, you go, oh my goodness, I've pledged a covenant with this person. I've pledged to be with them forever, but I realized they could stomp on my heart. They could leave me. They could walk out. So in marriage, we do this. In marriage, we do. You give me what I want, I'll give you what you want. And if you were to ever hurt me, I would. Because this is what humans do. Look at this. In 1 John chapter 4, verse 17, it says this: as we live in God, our love, and it uses the word agape here, the Greek word agape, our agape grows more perfect. As we grow in God, we move past eros, phileo, and storge into a dimension of love that's supernatural. It only happens from God because it doesn't make human sense. It's too risky, too scary. And he goes on to say this, watch this, next verse, 18. Such love, such agape, has no fear, because perfect love expels all fear. Perfect agape. He says, now look, understand, you're gonna grow in this. As you're growing in this love, the result will be, it will expel all fear. Watch this. If we are afraid, it is for fear of punishment. He said, if we're afraid for fear of punishment, this shows that we have not fully experienced his perfect love. We've not fully experienced agape. As you get married, this person, you make this commitment, you realize this person could really hurt me. So if you've been married, you ever had a conversation about what you would do if the other person cheated on you? You'll never get that again. Oh, you want her? Well, you can go get her dum-dum and lollipops, because you ain't getting this milkshake. I promise you'll never see it again. You'll never get, and I'll tell you what, I will take everything from you. I will take the kids. I'm not coming for half. I'll take everything. I will do. Oh, the secret? I will scream the secret from the rooftops. Yeah. When you turn on your TV, that'll be me on the screen, telling everybody about your little secret. All right, I will take everything. You'll never see me. You'll never see the kid, because we've got eros love, and I've put my heart out there. So I'm afraid, and so in my fear, I go, maybe if I ratchet up the consequences big enough. Are you seeing this thread? Runs through our marriage. Listen, you've heard a teenager say this, man, if I do that, my mom will kill me. You've never heard a 4-year-old say that. Because you don't threaten death to a 4-year-old. You threaten it to a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old. And we threaten it in our relationship. I asked my grandma, do you ever think about divorcing grandpa? She said, divorce? Never. Murder? Often. So I'm gonna get real. My wife's here today. One of the worst horrific thoughts I could think of would be for her to step out on me, to leave me for somebody else, to take the covenant, the relationship, and the faithfulness I've given her and go be with some other man. It would crush me, destroy me. It would hurt me very, very deeply. And it's that fear that would make me want to threaten her. Because I'm afraid if I take away the motivation of the threat and the fear, that I would set her too free. That in a moment of weakness, or in a moment of anger, or frustration, or temptation, that she would step out and would walk out and would do the very thing. Except it says perfect love casts out, agape casts out all fear. Paul talks about this in Romans 5 as he's explaining the gospel. He's explaining the love of God and the grace of God. And he says to him, he writes in Romans 5, he says, when we were utterly helpless, Christ came at just the right time and died for us sinners. Now most people, he says, would not be willing to die for an upright person, though some might perhaps be willing to die for a phileo. They might be willing to die for a brother or sister or a comrade or someone who's especially good. But God showed his great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. It's perfect love, agape love, as you grow up in it, casts out all fear. Casts out all fear. Can you imagine a husband sitting down with his wife and saying, I know it's gonna sound insane. I love you so much. I would lay down my life for you. And because of that, I've committed to you. I will love you for the rest of my life, no matter what you do. There's nothing you could do that will make me love you less or will make me leave. I will not leave you. I will not forsake you. I'm just gonna say it. If you cheat on me, it will break my heart. But I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. I'm here. What a terrifying thing to say. To fear that we would set this person so free that then they would stomp all over our hearts. And yet, friend, when you see a revelation of agape love and understand the gospel, what Jesus did was he demonstrated his love toward us in that while we were cheating on him. He died for us. Peter, we looked at last week, said, may God throw me in hell. He said, may God damn me if I know this man. And he denies him and he locks eyes with him. Go read the gospel account in the book of Mark when Jesus resurrects from the dead and the angels proclaiming it. He says, go tell the disciples and tell Peter. Make sure Peter knows. Because Peter cheated on him and Peter spent his whole life in these systems that people are, and he probably thinks Jesus doesn't want him, but he doesn't know agape yet. He doesn't know the gospel yet. That you can't outrun it. I realize one of the biggest obstacles to you actually believing this, one of the biggest obstacles, most of us don't have one other person in the world to love us on that level. Maybe you do. If you do, thank God. But many of us don't. But this is your chance. Some people will never let you forget what you did. See, when Jesus was trying to help the people he loved understand agape and understand the gospel, Peter comes to Jesus and says, Jesus, if someone does me wrong, I've heard you talking about forgiveness. If somebody does me wrong, how many times should I forgive him? He's like as many as 7? Like, should I forgive somebody 7 times? That's a lot. I mean, how many times are you gonna let somebody do you wrong? He's like, 7? Peter thinks he's being generous. Jesus goes, no, Peter, you shouldn't forgive 7. You gotta forgive 70 times 7. Throws a number to put his brain in a knot, help him understand. And if Jesus told Peter to forgive 490 times, how many times do you think Jesus will forgive you? This is uncomfortable grace because it leads us to a conclusion any logical person would have. It's the reason that you wouldn't sit in front of your spouse and say, even if you cheat on me, I'll still be with you. This is why you wouldn't do it, because you bring up this question that comes up, that Paul brings up in Romans 6:1. He says, well then, should we keep on sinning so that God can show us more and more of this wonderful grace? If God's so gracious and so loving and so agape, what would keep me or you from just sinning like crazy and sinning our brains out? If you tell me you're gonna stay with me even if I cheat on you, what would keep me from going out and doing it? All we know is how to motivate through consequences and rewards. That's all we know until we understand the gospel. Because he says, would you do that? He said, of course not. Since we've died to sin, how can we continue to live in it? Verse 6, we know that our old sinful natures were crucified with Christ so that sin might lose its power in our lives. We are no longer slaves to sin. We're mature enough to understand consequences and repercussions and regrets and shame, and Jesus got us out of all that. Why would I go live in that? Why would I break his heart over and over again? Guys, we only know how to do this. Let's get out of it. Let's do marriage different. Let's do our kids' relationships different. Let's do love in a different way. We revert to this all the time. And then we wonder why everything feels so shaky. I went to a men's conference one time. I go to this men's conference, and it was a marriage event, and their couples are together, and then they break the couples out, and so this guy is like this marriage expert, and he's speaking to the men. And he's like, all right, men, let's talk guy talk. Let's do guy talk. He's like, I know what you really want. You really want sex. It's what you really want from your wife. How many of you are frustrated you're not getting enough sex? It's like, all right, boys, take notes. Here's what we're gonna do. Here's what you wanna do. In the morning, make her breakfast in bed. These guys are like, he's like, you gotta start priming the pump in the morning. If you're gonna wanna, that's not exactly what he said, I'm paraphrasing, but the point was clear. It's like, make her breakfast in bed. He's like, and then, then at like 10 a.m., just randomly call her, give her a little Stevie Wonder, I just called to say I love you. Just give her a little 10 a.m., just prime that pump again. It's like, maybe 3 in the afternoon, just show up with a bouquet. And just at work, oh girl, I was just thinking about you, I love you. No reason. It's like, and that night for dinner, she's been working all day, she's tired, man. He's like, just order in her favorite dinner, and say, baby, I'll put the kids to bed. Let me put the kids to bed. Bro, by the time you get those kids out the bed, these dudes are like, ready to break the dum-dum world record up, and they're just... All right, bro, I'll wrap it up. I see you want to get home. And I'm sitting there, dude, and I get it, and I'm not saying I didn't try it, but I get it, but I'm like, what? Really? I'm thinking, I don't want to make my wife breakfast in bed because I'm hoping she'll give me a dum-dum later. I'm serious. I want to make my wife, if I make my wife breakfast in bed, I want to make it because I love her. Because I love her. If I call her in the middle of the day just to say, I was just thinking about you, I think you're amazing, I just got a fresh wave of gratitude over the fact that you forsook everybody else for me. It just hit me again. I can't believe it. Thank you. Thank you. If I take her flowers, I don't want it to be because I'm hoping to get lucky later, or I'm hoping that she'll give me what I really want. I want to just take her flowers and be like, I just want to give you a gift. Why are we doing this relationship with God with all this stuff? I'll do what you want if you give me what I want, and I'm afraid to take this away. Well, let's go deeper. Let's go higher. Let's go farther. And it happens with a revelation of his love, that when I understand that he demonstrated his love toward me, and that while I was a sinner, Jesus trying to help these guys get it. He's like, how do I help them get it? 70 times 7, and it didn't work. The math just didn't get to the heart. He's like, no, here's what the love's like. Here's what agape love's like. Here's what it is. Agape love is like, it's like a son comes to his father and says, I want your stuff more than I want you. And I'm gonna get half when you die anyway. Just give it to me now. And a brokenhearted father gives him the stuff, and the son goes and screws it all up, blows it, shoots it up his arm, wastes every bit of it. It's gone, it's done. Now he's in the epitome of shame, and he feels like a complete idiot, and he's lost everything, and he's starving, and he's his lowest place. And in his lowest place, he thinks, okay, I am never gonna be able to be his son again. My dad's probably gonna kill me. But maybe, just maybe, he'll let me sleep in the barn and be a servant. And when he was a long way off, the father sees his son, and like only a parent recognizes the silhouette and the gait of their child. And the father's like, Dad, I know they didn't have a conversation about consequences. We already know. Didn't have a conversation about character. I already know. I learned the hard way. They had a conversation about relationship. He said, I thought you were dead. Put a ring on his finger. Put a robe on his back. Kill the fattened calf. My son is home. Until you understand that you could not out-sin the grace of God. You don't know agape. So today, many times in a message, I'll lead us to an action step around doing something. Let's do this, let's do that. Today, I don't want you to do anything. I want you to feel something. I want you to feel the love and the grace of God that you couldn't earn. If something comes to your mind that's a reminder of your biggest mistake and your greatest shame, I want you to realize that even if you could go back in time and undo that and have done the right thing, you wouldn't be any more loved. Not one bit.